Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for standing by. And there may be some public service announcements that we weren't expecting, but other than that, this should go smooth. My name is Leanne Martin-Fay. I'm the Program Director for Financial Education at the Office of Economic Empowerment at Massachusetts State Treasurer's Office. All the lines are in listen-only mode today, with the exception, of course, of our panelists. Today's conference is being recorded, so if you have any objections, you can disconnect at this time. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please direct them to the following email address: financialeducation@tre.state.ma.us. We will reserve time at the end of the webinar to answer your questions. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the very first Promising Practices webinar for the Financial Education Innovation Fund program for Massachusetts high schools. So just quickly, as many as you probably know, we are the Office of Economic Empowerment, an almost 3-year-old department at the State Treasurer's Office. The office is committed to supporting, advocating, and facilitating policies that empower all Massachusetts residents. Our programs serve women, high school students, veterans, and seniors. Our priorities include closing the wage gap, increasing access to financial education, improving college affordability, and investing in STEM careers and education. Within the Office of Economic Empowerment, or OEE as we fondly call it, Massachusetts State Treasurer Deborah Goldberg established a financial literacy task force. The OEE has implemented 18 of the 22 recommendations issued by the task force in their December 2015 report. Below are some highlights about the progress we have made specifically related to the K-12 financial literacy recommendations. So with that, I will get to the content of today's webinar, which is Promising Practices for Implementing a Financial Education or Credit for Life Fair. I'll start by recognizing the strong partnership and funding made possible by the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation and the Division of Banks. This partnership has enabled Massachusetts to bring financial education fairs to over 80 schools and 26,000 students. Grantees are diverse in population and geography across the state and have included 11 Massachusetts gateway cities. Today's goals are really to provide you with promising practices. We have experienced fair coordinators, and they really want to share with you what they've learned, particularly around educator, community, student, and parent engagement, which includes creative strategies such as surveys and needs assessment, one-to-one teaching models, workshops, tutorials, and classroom assignments. At this time, I would like to invite our 6 panelists to introduce themselves, including their title and school or schools that they're affiliated with through the Innovation Fund program. And let's start with Scott and then Dave.
Hi, I'm Scott Darlington, Assistant Principal at Andover High School.
I'm Dave Florine, resident of Andover and former Senior Vice President of the Mass Bankers Association.
And Ellen and Ingrid.
Hi, my name is Ellen Walsh, and I'm a business technology teacher here at Clinton High School.
Ingrid Adade, formerly Assistant Vice President of Financial Education for Leominster Credit Union, and I'm now volunteering at Clinton High.
Thank you both. Michael Tuber.
My name is Michael Tuber. I'm the Director of Transition Services at the Cotting School in Lexington.
Thank you, Mike. And Elizabeth Hennessy.
Hi, I'm Beth Hennessy. I'm the Community and Career Coordinator at Nipmuc Regional High School. I work for the towns of Mendon and Upton here in Central Mass.
Thanks, Beth. Thank you to all our panelists. And I'm pleased to turn the presentation over to Scott Darlington, Vice Principal at Andover High School, to share his approach to educator engagement, followed by Dave Florine and to address his community engagement. So thank you, everyone, and I'll turn it over to Scott.
Very first day, and he had the idea of trying to do a financial literacy fair. I was coming from Hudson High School, where we did a reality fair, which was very similar, but we needed to get it off the ground for the first time at Andover High School. So in working with my principal, he really wanted me to survey the faculty to gauge their support for something like a Credit for Life fair, a financial literacy fair, and in order to be able to get kids out of class and get the release time to hold the fair. So we did a Google survey and asked all the things that we all know as far as folks that have run the fairs that are important for students that we may not be teaching in our classes. all the fundamentals of financial literacy. So should students know how insurance works, or a car loan works, or student loans? And the answer came back from the teachers as yes, overwhelmingly. And should we give time to help educate students on these items? And again, there was very strong faculty support for doing a fair. So we started out in the fall with that survey, and then we worked and we did our fair on May 12th. In the spring, we had 14 booths down at our field house. We did our entire senior class, almost 400 students. We had 80 volunteers from the community, and we had a great partner in the Service Club of Andover, and also Dave Florine. So with that, I'll turn it over to my partner, Dave Florine.
Scott, and hello to everyone. Background too, I was one of the members, actually designee from the banking industry on that task force, and it was a great pleasure to work on that. And one of the areas that we all identified as being really important was reaching out to high schools and the students. And in my role with the banking industry, got to see a lot of the value of these fairs, and always wanted to try to get one going in the town where I lived in Andover. And yet it was just physically and for a lot of other reasons not possible to do that. But when I retired full-time about 2 years ago, sort of made it one of my goals to see if we could make this work. And really there are sort of two models that I would say that are popular and that are effective for doing a Credit for Life fair. The one I was most familiar with is where a particular financial institution, a bank, a credit union, or perhaps in some cases a local business, is the sole sponsor. And the sole sponsor gets, in a sense, to work directly with the school system or systems, and they can reach out to their own employee base or their customer client base and develop the volunteers, fund everything, and it's a little easier to manage. In the case of Andover, I was pretty sure that there wasn't a single bank or credit union that headquartered in town or had the resources to do all of that. But I was well aware of a community group. It's been around for 20 years, called the Service Club of Andover, which has done a lot of work with mentoring students and students with special needs and many, many other service projects. They were also a legitimate and accepted 501c3 that could accept tax-deductible donations from other businesses and corporations and individuals. And it also was helpful that I knew some of the leaders there well. So we reached out to them, met with their board, and within 10 minutes they said, "We're in. How do we do this?" So Scott described, the outreach that we had and the tremendous support and engagement that we had with Scott and the team at the high school. And over 4 to 5 months, we went out and raised another $6,600 on top of the $5,000 seed grant that we were so graciously received from the State Treasurer's office. And that made it possible for us to pull the fair together. I will say this, the real many benefits of using a community-based group. You have an opportunity to build a lot of support. You can go in many diverse ways to recruit people. But the downside or the flip side of that, of course, is you have people to ask and multiple people to coordinate. And I really became kind of the fundraiser in chief, in some cases literally cold calling and knocking on doors up and down Main Street of Andover and going to a number of the banks and credit unions that I had known, supermarkets, and the Service Club and their team went to local insurance agents and auto dealers. And those were the primary sources of funding. In the end, we had, I think, 13 separate entities. The Rotary Club of Andover was enormously supportive, both with volunteers and with financial. Same thing with the Kiwanis Club. And we have another group in town called ACE, Andover Community for Education. And they too were very, very helpful. So the benefit of a community-wide, community-based approach is simply that you build a lot of support, you build a lot of encouragement, and I think from our perspective, we got tremendous feedback, and we also did a survey of all the sponsors and the volunteers, and many of them have already said we're on again for next year. So I would suggest if you have the right organization, it would work well for you.
Thank you, Dave. And I did want to note that you had a local radio personality come out and interview students, and I just think it's fantastic. I think we could probably post on the YouTube the link to that, so folks can hear some of the real candid testimonials from the students. And again, it's a great way to get the word out, is to reach out to your your local, being creative in the end, it seems. You all.
I would also, and you're absolutely correct, Leanne, and I would also add that our local newspaper, the Andover Townsman, ran a nice article about it. We had taken a lot of pictures and them, and that helped generate some publicity. Yeah.
Thank you. We understand the importance of working with the educators in the community as a whole in order for the program to be sustainable. So congratulations on your first fair. And for folks listening, just remember that we encourage you to email any questions to OEE or to the panelists to financialeducation@tre.state.ma.us. And some might say that they had a lot of success in Andover, yet they may be a hashtag Senior Scary Day trending this year. It sounds like it did a good job of having the students open their eyes to some challenges they may have to face. The good news is that nearly all of your student survey respondents indicated that they would use the information that they learned from the fair in their own lives. So congratulations to you. Our next panelists are Alan Walsh and Ingrid Adadi to share how they have taken a student-centered path to engaging students in their fairs. So thank you both, and I will turn it over now to Ellen.
Okay, so if you could move to the next slide. Our fair is really student-centered. So we have used our students for basically every job that is available, from setting up and planning the fair all the way through to cleaning up on the very last day. So the first year we had the fair, Ingrid Adadi was working here. There's a Leominster Credit Union branch in our building, and we ran the fair together, although she really ran it and I just did whatever she told me to. Well, now it's our fourth year. This is our fourth year, and we really have a partnership now, and the fair has gotten better each time. So we use my business students in Intro to Business class. The first year they did signage. We had nothing. So they did the signage, they did the booth design, they did worked on props, they created handouts where we didn't have any props. They were literally bringing in props from home. They updated the training material, which was provided by the Leominster Credit Union and Ingrid, and we tied it to the curriculum, and they were graded for many of the works that they did along the way until the fair. Okay, they also, if you go to the next slide, they also worked at the fair. So those same students that did a lot of the planning and the pre-work, we had a welcome desk at the front entrance to the school with two students working there. And their job was to welcome the community members and to escort them back to the gym where the fair was being held. For many of them, we had 44, I think, community volunteers. It was their first time in the building. So they brought them back to the fair. They registered the workers, they registered the students, they registered the booth workers. They were also booth workers. We had what we called financial experts. They were high school students who we paired with a small group of 3 or 4 8th graders. Last year, for the first time, we had a group of 8th graders come, and we paired them up with one high school student that would be kind of their go-to person. So we wanted them to still go through the fair independently, but with a little bit of a support feature, and that was the student who had gone, maybe it was a student who had gone to the fair last year. They also were runners. We had somebody that last year that we called Mr. Money. It was a senior who had, kind of a comical costume on. And one of the other students had created, I think, around 50 or more financial literacy questions and answers. And Mr. Money had a bag of candy, and he went around and randomly asked students at the fair financial literacy questions, and if they got the question, if they answered it correctly, they got a prize. So we really use students from, start to finish as much as we possibly can. Next slide.
So our students have the ability of actually having a mini project, and that mini project is that they actually go through a career assessment quiz, which actually features what careers that are more appropriate for their skill set. So they get a chance to do that, choose that skill. They learn about the salaries, the job outlooks, which college would offer them more of a prominent type of education for that. And there is pre and post testing on that. So what happens is that the student walks in that day, they primarily know if they're going to be an attorney or if they're going to be a bus driver. But the object of the whole fair is actually being able to live on the amount of the net pay that they have figured out on their budget sheet.
Great. Thank you both. I think that you have given us some insights as to how we can think about involving the middle schools. And I think that's just so exciting. This program is designed for high schools, but we know that the peer model opportunity with many topics, but financial education included, can be a powerful method. So thank you for testing it. We may have questions today or down the road that we may be bouncing off both of you and Clinton. So thanks again. And I know that this quote here really kind of hits the nail on the head. Life isn't as easy as you think. You need to learn how to budget your money. I mean, that really captures it nicely in your qualitative data that you got back to us in your last surveys. So thank you both for sharing. And Ingrid, thank you for passing it forward to Ellen and showing us how it's done.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Elizabeth Hennessy to share her 21st century learning approach to engaging students by integrating financial literacy lessons in innovative ways. Beth?
Hi, everyone. Nipmuc was really fortunate in having our first, receiving seed money last year. It was our first financial wellness fair, and it was actually the first fair I'd ever seen or attended. So if we can have an effective fair, I know you can too. And we decided to use technology to try to work a little smarter for our fair. And we also, part of my role here at Nipmuc is to create opportunities for students to engage in real world projects and teach skills which are valued in college or at the university or at the workplace by embedding employability skills into real world projects. So in this case, students learned leadership, project management, communication and networking skills by participating in our steering committee for the fair. And the remainder of the committee included folks such as you've heard from our other participants, banking representatives, school faculty, and the byproduct was some really incredible networking for our students as well. We wanted to, it's hard in a high school sometimes to carve out time away from academics for these important endeavors. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we determined that this was something that students both wanted and that faculty felt was really important. So if we could go to the next slide. So we have 2 full-day conferences for our students each year. And an embedded skill for these students is attending a conference. So we use, each one has a different theme, and we use conference software, Sketch.com, which is a free version, to upload our conference offerings. And if we could just back up one slide, the conference that I want to draw your attention to is last spring we asked our students, our faculty, and our school community, what skills do all kids need to know but are never taught? And we had hot chocolate and snacks for kids to lure them in, and we got over 500 different responses, 130 different responses, but in the top 10, 5 of them were financial literacy related topics. So we put those topics into Sketch, And we used Eventbrite to invite students to the conference. We sold them a ticket through Eventbrite, which is also a free resource for you. And we we sold the tickets at $0 to the conference. And then they picked the workshops that they wanted to attend. So this is the way we embedded some of our career, the information about the skills for our students in advance of the fair. We could go forward 2 slides, actually. So these are some of the topics that were taught at the financial literacy was actually a strand at our conference for this particular conference ahead of the financial literacy wellness fair. And I can see the metrics behind the signups ahead of the fair. And which is really interesting is we had to add extra sessions of some of these topics because they were so in demand by our students. So we were able to partner with our community and ask, and we have some nice relationships that are built in as part of our regular programming, but we knew that we needed more expertise and maybe a little different expertise than we usually tap in our community. So we used another free resource, Sign Up Genius, to create a sign up and farmed it out to all the emails that we had in the community and invited people to share the link to the Sign Up Genius. And this was a great way to do this because as the coordinator, it allowed me to have a spreadsheet ready built for communication purposes with my students and our community. Back to the steering committee for a little bit. The students had a really powerful role in the steering committee, and they changed their mind a couple times about what we were doing or what we had planned to do. So they really had a voice, and they had responsibility for taking on assignments and then reporting back to in the steering committee sessions as to their progress and giving feedback on the progress that others were making there. So they really did do remarkably well. I think these links, this slide is going to be available later in links. And if you click on any of these, you'll be able to see the descriptions of the conference workshops. So I guess we could move forward from there. So as I said, it was our first conference last year. So we have, based on our survey feedback, we have some challenges and opportunities ahead. So as we plan this year, 2 of the students who were maybe a little reluctant to be on the steering committee last year, didn't feel personally that they had the skill set, really rose to the occasion by being a part of last year's steering committee. And this year they approached me about taking on the project themselves as leading up the steering committee. So they're actually doing their DECA project as taking on this project themselves. And they've been in the process this year of reviewing the data that we collected through the post survey. Also some surveying that we did of students. We also surveyed our booth captains and booth volunteers before they left. And they're using that data to come up with what we're going to do differently this year. We also, in our sophomore classes, all students take a half-year course called the 21st Century Learning. And in that course, we use EverFi financial literacy training. So the students have actual lessons by teachers, plus they use the EverFi, which is a free resource online, so that they get a certificate at the end for their cleaning. And how one of the outcomes from last year was that our local banking representatives offered to our students to come in and actually pair up with our teachers to do some of these lessons. So again, it lends a nice air of authenticity and also gives students a chance to practice some of the networking skills that we're teaching them here in our classes. So that was great. But we do have some things that we're changing up this year. And you can stay tuned, and you're all welcome to come to our next fair. We do have our next conference planned. If you take a look at that and you'd like to attend, our next conference will be January 24th here at Nipmuc, and I invite anyone out there to attend and look for more questions. Have questions, so let me know.
Thank you so much, Beth, and that invitation is very generous. We look forward to hearing how your 2018 fair goes and your conferences. I hope others will expand how they think about threading financial literacy with a career and college ready approach as well. Our final panelist is Michael Tubb from the Cotting School, a special education school based in Lexington, Mass. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'd like to talk a little bit about our transition fair. It was we held our first one last March, and it was largely in response to really parent interest in transition and some of the some of the fears and anxieties that have to do with students turning 22 and life after high school. This transition fair was also the first event that we held at Cotting that was designed for both students and parents to attend simultaneously. We can go to the next slide. So a little bit about Cotting. It serves students ages 3 to 22. Demographically, we've had a shift the last couple of years, so most of our students are transition age at this point. And so when we thought about our transition fair, we were talking about financial literacy needs, both as for the students in terms of their own empowerment and making, and for the parents and all of the financial decisions that go along from a special education and special needs perspective. The next slide. So here's an overview of our fair. We had vendor tables, but we also invited vendors to give workshops. So we had those happening on financial literacy. We had student-led financial literacy activities. Those came out of their classrooms and out of transition planning classes where students aged 18 to 21 designed activities for students aged 14 to 17. We also folded in an event that we used to run separately, and that is our alumni panel, where we had former students come and talk about their lives, and then we also invited their parents to come and talk to our current parents. We specifically target our fair because we thought the needs of our community were very unique. Typically, our students have multiple things happening, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to focus our information on them. So we kept our fair just focused on our families. Next slide. So a little bit about the vendor presentations. We were able to have people from state agencies come and talk about some financial issues. We were able to have Mass Rehab and DDS come, as well as our own staff present information. This has to do from everything from working and continuing to receive benefits to different models of funding for adult service agencies to some of the financial implications of guardianship. There are a lot of things happening when students turn 18, and so we wanted to make sure that we focused on that portion of our student body as well. So we were pleased to not only have tables, but to have those folks give presentations as well. Next slide. The main part from the student perspective was to develop activities that would then be executed at the night of the fair. So our older students were able to think about the things that they struggled with, or the things that they thought their younger classmates were struggling with. So these became very practical activities. Introduction to banking and savings, comparing costs of different things, certainly a lot of budgeting, a lot of community resources, using public transportation, and using different transportation to think about practical life problems and how to go about solving them. So this was a good exercise for our older students to engage in. It's the type of things that we're teaching them to be able to learn how to do before they exit high school. So for them to be able to recognize things that they were working on and think about what that might sound like to someone a few years younger to them was a very productive exercise for our students. Just demographically, we have 110 students. That's about 18 or 19 classrooms. So we had 4 classroom teachers, specialists contribute units of their class curriculum towards the fair.
Those are great details. Thank you, Michael.
And the final part of our presentation had to do with our alumni and our alumni parents. Pardon me, I should say alumni parent presentations. Because it allowed our current students and our current parents to hear about what life was like after age 22 from a life perspective, but also specifically from a financial perspective. There's so many mechanisms out there in adult services that parents learn about after they exit K-12 education, and it's not information that is easily found. So our alumni parents were able to share a lot of things that they have learned about managing finances and planning for life with a special needs adult. So I felt like this was very important for our current parents to hear. It's definitely the questions we get asked the most from parents is what are the alumni doing? How are they handling some of these issues? When you're leaving the world of entitlement and K-12 education to a world that's not entitled, it can be daunting for families. So to have some examples of people who are finding success, we heard very creative solutions regarding employment, housing, transportation, and it was just, I think, very refreshing and hopeful for our parents to hear. So our aim was really just to provide concrete examples of people that our students know, people that they've met before at basketball games or other school events, but to hear about their lives today and hear about different decisions that they've made. So that was really the aim of folding in our alumni and our alumni panel into this event.
Thank you so much. You bring such a great, unique perspective on the special education programs and schools were invited to participate this recent year, and we really only hope to increase the number of schools and programs involved in this program. So I really do appreciate your perspective. Which brings us to a very important announcement for folks that are wondering if there'll be a chance to apply for innovation funds again in this current academic year, and there'll be an announcement coming very soon, and you'll be able to find updates on the mass.gov website. So just to be aware that the way you heard about today's event as well, you should probably, if you got an email about it, you will probably receive another notice if the announcement is if the announcement happens in the near future. At this time, we would like to pose a few questions that have come in for our panelists. Starting with Scott and David at Andover High School. The question is, how do you pay for the many extraneous costs?
Well,
David,
I'll take a stab at that first. I mean, the first thing you need to do is a complete budget of the components of a fair. And that's something that whether you have a steering committee or in our case, there were really three of us, the head of the service club, Scott and myself, that for a while met almost every week. And we had the guidance of the template or the workbook that the treasurer's office has. I also had the benefit of having known some bankers that have put on numbers of fairs so that we could put the budget together. And so I think if the questioner is asking extraneous, I mean, I think the 5 or 6 main items of a fair are the pad folios that a lot of people use. These are the kind of vinyl or leatherette kind of pad folios that some may have a calculator, some may not. That might have an embossing of the sponsor or the school. And that for us was the single largest expense. Second largest was going to a party rental company for the pipe and drape that you would need in your field house or wherever you hold it. Then you've got printing, and that can be done in-house or with a printing firm or the community if they have one. And then you've got smaller amounts for supplies and teacher stipend, food, gift cards, gift rewards for students for raffles and so forth. I think most schools do is you wrap it all up into a total budget. And, you know, we had, as I said, we had, I think, 12 or 13 separate donors. It all went into one fund, and that's how we paid for it.
Could I just add one item? I just wanted to say too, where there's a will, there's a way. So, you know, in Andover, we raised a lot of money. We had a lot of resources with the grant. But previously, I was in Hudson, and we pretty much did it on a shoestring. But we found the local community group. In that case, it was a video bank. Usually, there's a bank or a Rotary Club or someone that's really involved in your community and willing to help out with raising the money. And so if there's a will, there's a way. It can be at all different scales and price points. But the biggest thing is that it's important so to get it to your students.
The other thing, Scott's absolutely right. You know, and the other place, again, we had about 12 or 13 from the FDIC and the Division of Banks, and we had another 25 or so or 30 from credit unions. We also had folks from the mental health, the medical healthcare community, people who work there, and two of our local grocery stores, Stop and Shop and Whole Foods, competitors, but we're side by side at the food and nutrition booth and brought in a lot of free samples. And, you know, we're absolutely terrific. And we went out and we talked to the business people. They were very enthused and very glad that somebody was stepping up to do something that they thought was really important. So, as Scott said, if you have a legitimate and a powerful case, the biggest challenge was getting the word out.
Well, it sounds like you did that. So thank you for answering that question. It is, you know, I know that there are different scales and different models. So did anyone else want to respond to the question, how do you pay for the many extraneous costs? I think you both did a great job of it. I don't know, Alan, I know Ingrid, you both been involved for many years. Ingrid, did you have any thoughts?
Definitely, the Mr. Credit Union played a great portion of that. But for our printing and other things like that, we do have companies in town that donated a lot of their time and also services.
Thank you.
So that helped us with the cost a great deal.
Good point. In-kind donations seem to be something we've seen in many of the models as well. So thank you. And so shifting gears a little bit, we had a question specifically from Michael at the Cotting School. How does financial education align with the practical math skills that the Cotting School teaches during transition? And can you share an example of that?
Sure, absolutely. I try to answer this question from the top down. So for this process and working with the Department of Treasury last year, it was great to come in contact with the National Standards for Financial Literacy. That's been a very helpful tool. And if I look at those standards, we really focus on two of the strands, which is buying goods and services and savings. That's where we feel like most of the practical math that we look at matches up with those strands. And then within those, we can think of skills that we want to, that we want to impart to our students, including estimation, cost comparison, and this all really entails a lot of number sense. We are overly dependent on calculators and technology, and being able to recognize when something is not the right answer is critical. So anything that focuses on broader thinking and using your number sense and estimating is great. From a lesson standpoint, we've developed games here that really try to simulate daily life. We have board games that have to do with monthly expenses and your budget and how often you're receiving income and your expenses for the month and keeping track and things like that. And that really incorporates a lot of these different skills I'm talking about. Other classrooms have their own classroom economy where everything in the classroom is run on a financial model. Students are buying their own supplies, things like that. They're getting paid for turning in assignments and things like that, just mocking up the budget in that way. So we have several classrooms that are involved in that kind of scale of economy. Also, all of our students in the middle, upper, and our 18 to 22 program are out in the community constantly, as much as once a week, sometimes twice a month. And those are great opportunities to really apply a lot of these skills. So a lot of the things that we learn in the classroom are then tested out in the community. There are things that are challenging for us, but that I think are reachable for some of our students. And those have to do with topics such as interest, credit, and investment. Those would be a little trickier for us to get to. But our strength here is adaptation. So I feel like work from the top down, and we like to work from the high school standards down, and we like to see how we can fit those things in. Those topics would be a little more challenging for us, but we do have students that can access those. So those are some of the ways that I would think about it, and I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. And a great segue from that is, Beth, in your personal opinion, and based on the data that you were seeing coming through about the financial workshops and the interest of the students, which workshops best prepared students for the fair when attending your conference in advance and prior to the fair?
We could definitely see the impact of the workshops that had to do with credit scores, understanding their credit, that played out in our survey responses as well. For the 2 years prior to this last conference, we did offer something globally called Are You Smart About Money? And that's where we started to that made us start to look for financial innovation grant funding, because we couldn't offer that enough. There was such high demand from students. So, and that was where students were getting a chance to actually do in a very small format what they do at the financial literacy or financial wellness fairs. So. And
who taught those credit courses?
So in some cases, they were taught by our faculty who had experience, but in many cases, those were offered by our community partners, either folks from the business industry, business and industry, or our collegiate partners, or our community partners like Rotary or any of the chambers. Their members offered to come in and teach those as well.
Excellent. And shifting gears once again, we have a question for the Clinton High School Fair. What are some challenges that you faced by inviting multiple schools to participate in the program? And others can chime in too as after they've answered, because I know that you all have different experiences with this.
Well, our fair was a little different. We did have other schools come in. We actually have the fair at the school. Previously, it had a hotel, which was a little bit off-centered as far as being in a school atmosphere. So when you have other schools coming into an existing school, it makes it a little bit challenging as far as the hallways, what the expectations are. So we had to work very collaboratively with the other teachers that were coming in, but it did work. Our 8th grade students that came over, they were with a special team called a STEM program. So with that in mind, it was a specific area group. So it wasn't really a challenge other than the students being in another school and not their school, and the students that are here in Clinton having other students from other student bodies coming in.
We did have one issue with a school that came last year where the students, I don't know if they just chose to ignore our advice, but they didn't come dressed in business attire, which we requested. And so that we noticed right off the bat. And then we had issues with some of those kids wearing hats, and the vice principal actually asked them to leave. So, we have had issues, but overall it's been successful.
A great experience.
Sure, communication is even more important when you have other schools invited to your program. So I think that's a really important point. Excellent. I think some of the other folks on the panel had mentioned they've done some observation at some multi-school fairs. Was it David? Was it you that wanted to share what you've seen in terms of how many schools you've seen attend one fair at a time?
Sure. Both Scott and I went to Masconomet Regional on the North Shore. And, well, the fair has been at Masconomet for 10 years, and it's sponsored by the Institution for Savings in Newburyport. And they fund the entire fair. Scott, what did she say? There were 7 or 8 schools, high schools in the North Shore, all juniors. And they bus them Not every junior. I think there's maybe some, 70, 80% of the classes, but they are all bussed over, and they all were in business attire. Many of the boys had suits, and the women were well dressed. And clearly there was good communication there in advance, expected. And I thought it went off very well. And I mean, there's a lot of communication. There's a lot of expense there because you're busing all of those kids. And that's something that the sponsoring entities had to underwrite, as well as box lunches for kids.
It's a really good point.
Your observations.
When we went to the Massachusetts Fair, it was really neat to see, students from different schools going around to the same booths. They had involved a number of the community organizations. They had a station where the police and fire were, and they had like a siren, and they were calling kids over by name to get something or this or that. So they kind of added like a public safety education component to it, which was really neat. But it was neat to see like hundreds, much bigger than the fair that we did, and see them all come together. But that did take a lot of resources from the Institution for Savings.
Thank you, Scott.
I think there were about 900 students there.
Sure, I think you're right about that. Easy. And so we could put folks in touch with those organizations as well if they ever have questions about how to host a fair of that magnitude. Thank you.
I would not, Leanne, I would also recommend don't do that the first time.
Yeah. Seed fairs or first time fairs, I think sometimes are best when walk before you run, and sometimes also observing and attending other fairs that are being delivered in your, maybe you're part of the state, and, seeing it with your own eyes sometimes gives you some insights or fresh perspective for your own fair, or even for them, to give them some feedback. So that's great. I think this is all the time we have for questions for today, but I really hope that folks will continue to email the financial education at tre.state.ma.us email address, and follow OEE on Twitter, and subscribe to our departmental updates and newsletters through the mass.gov website. With that, I'd just like to conclude our Promising Practices webinar with a quote from Treasurer Goldberg. Financial education is a key component to helping Massachusetts residents achieve economic stability and security. Lastly, this webinar has been recorded, so you can find it on the mass.gov/treasury/empowerment website after today. And we really appreciate all our panelists. Thank you all so much. You are invaluable to us, and your participation. Thank you very much for all of those in attendance.